With the recent bittersweet news of a breakthrough in the investigation of Tupac Shakur's death, it sent me on a deep dive into the life of an influential figure whose life I did not know much about, except the tidbits of information I'd come across throughout the years. An artist who only lived till the age of 25 and yet was able to leave a dent in the passage of time. How and why? LaShawn Parrish Crooks was born on the 16th of June 1971 in East Harlem, Upper Manhattan, New York City. When he turned 1, he was renamed Tupac Amaru Shakur after the descendant of the last Incan ruler, Tupac Amaru II, who was executed in Peru in 1781 when he failed to accomplish a successful uprising against the Spanish rulership on his land. His mother, Afeni Shakur Davis, having changed her name from Alice Faye Williams, was a passionate political activist and explained, "I wanted him to have the name of revolutionary indigenous people in the world. I wanted him to know he was part of a world culture and not just from a neighborhood." According to legend, after having witnessed the death of his loved ones and captains, Tupac Amaru II made one final promise before he was dismembered, then beheaded, saying, "I will return and I will be millions." I thought that was so interesting considering the life of his namesake 190 years later. Back in the 20th century, Tupac's siblings were an older stepbrother, Mopreme Komani, and half-sister Sekiwa Shakur, who was 2 years his junior. His mother, Afeni, and his biological father, William Billy Garland, who had little contact with his son growing up, were active members of the Black Panther Party in New York from the late 1960s to early 1970s. Heavily pregnant and a month due to delivery, Afeni was tried from the 8th of September 1970 as part of the Panther 21 criminal trial, but absolved of over 150 charges by May 1971. The trial had lasted for 8 months, taking up her whole pregnancy. Charges brought against her and the other members of the Black Panther Party were attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and conspiracy to bomb buildings. Afeni represented herself at trial, personally interviewing several witnesses and defending her innocence in court. In her autobiography, she wrote, "I was young, I was arrogant, and I was brilliant in court, because I thought this was the last time I could speak, the last time before they locked me up forever. I was writing my own obituary." Her statements and questioning of the supposed infiltrators during the trial were credited with helping expose the corruption within the FBI, as well as saving other members of the Panther 21. Mutulu Shakur, Tupac's stepfather, previously known as Gerald Wayne Williams, who had married his mother Afeni in 1975 when Pac was only 4, was also involved in the Black Panthers' Black Liberation Army and convicted of damning crimes and imprisoned after spending 4 years among the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. He was taken into custody in 1986 and then convicted for an earlier 1981 robbery of a Brinks armored truck in which the perpetrators absconded with $1.6 million in cash, equivalent to $5.2 million in 2022. When found guilty, he was sentenced to 60 years in prison, though he would only serve 37 due to declining health, only to die 8 months later on the 6th of July this year after his early release. Though his marriage to Afeni ended in 1982, during which he would have been on the run from the law, his relationship with Tupac persevered over the years, with the two sharing a close bond and Tupac reportedly considering him a father figure for much of his life. In 1991, while he was still incarcerated, he co-authored the famous Code of Thug Life with Pac, which was a set of rules discouraging unprovoked violence between gangs. Until his last moments, Tupac would grow up believing a lie, that his biological father was a drug dealer known as Legs, who died of a heart attack when he turned 15. A lie told in order to quell uncomfortable questions his mother was not prepared to answer. William Shaw would ask him in a later interview, "When did you first start looking for a father figure?" Tupac would respond, "When I started seeing other people and how they handled it. I was like, damn, why do I have to drink? Why do I grind my teeth when I sleep? Why is it so mandatory that I get respect? If you call me a we're going to fight. That's what I have to constantly work with. It wasn't reinforced that I was a man, so I can't let nobody shake it because I might die that second they call me a and that can't be the last thing they called me. The Black Panther Party had significant influence on Tupac's life and on the lives of those around him. Among other family members involved were his godfather, Elmer Geronimo Pratt, who was a decorated military veteran and high ranking within the Black Panther Party, and was convicted of the murder of Caroline Olsen, a 27-year-old elementary school teacher during a 1968 robbery. He served 27 years in prison until his conviction was annulled due to the prosecution having concealed evidence that proved his innocence. His godmother, Assata Olugbala Shakur, sister of his stepfather Mutulu Shakur, was also a member of the Black Liberation Army and convicted of first-degree murder of a New Jersey state trooper. She is still wanted by the FBI till date. In the years after the Panther 21 trial, Afeni Shakur fell into addiction and a series of bad relationships. Perhaps it was due to the stress she sustained from the whole ordeal, immediately followed by the responsibility of raising a child on her own. Perhaps it was a coping mechanism developed due to the disillusionment that set in following her release as she watched the movement she had been so passionate about slowly crumble while the world returned to business as usual. She will go on to state that she believed the Black Panther Party and she herself had failed. After marrying Mutulu in 1975, giving birth to Tupac's sister Sekiwa, and her subsequent divorce that same year, she was addicted to crack cocaine. By the 1980s, she found it difficult to find work due to the instability of her addiction. On September the 3rd, 1983, Tupac was enrolled into Harlem's 127th Street Repertory Ensemble and was cast as the Travis Younger character in the play A Raisin in the Sun, which was performed at the Apollo Theater. It seems he always had a knack for the stage and putting on a performance. In 1984, the family relocated from New York to Baltimore, Maryland, where Tupac attended the Roland Park Middle School in the 8th grade and then transferred to Paul Laurence Dunbar High School in the 9th grade. In 1986, he spent his 10th grade education at the Baltimore School for the Arts, where he was said to have taken classes in acting, poetry, jazz, and ballet. There he was able to perform various plays, once as the Mouse King in the Nutcracker Ballet, and also Shakespearean plays where themes of conflict and warfare were pronounced, which he would later contrast to street gang activities. It was at the Baltimore School for the Arts where he also met fellow student Jada Pinkett, who became a subject of some of his poems as they developed a close friendship. It was the first day and he came over to me and introduced himself, Jada said in an interview for People magazine. And in high school, Pac was a little funny looking. Definitely from looking at him, wasn't necessarily the type of cat that I would even deal with. But as soon as he approached me, he was like a magnet. He also developed a reputation at the school as the best rapper after winning several competitions with his friend Dana Smith, nicknamed Mouse, as his beatbox. Many of the ex-alumni described him as very charismatic, having a great sense of humor which allowed him to mix with all cliques of people. In a letter penned to a high school crush from his drama class when he was 17, who he nicknamed Beethoven, he would not only reveal his deep sensitivity but also his love for Prince. I want you to know that you can tell me anything, and if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, you can cry on mine. I have so many good thoughts about what lies ahead of us, and it is my hope that they all come true. As you will soon find out, I do not spare words. I say what I feel. So if something I say scares you, please don't panic because I tend to get over-emotional. My heart usually leads me too fast, and that's probably why I always get hurt. So if it seems as though I'm moving too fast, please slow me down. Talking to you on the phone was such a good feeling for me. I was beginning to feel alone, and out of the blue, I meet you, and it's almost like I've known you for years. We have so much in common. We both love Prince, we have both had broken hearts, and we both adore candles. What else could I ask for? Aside from Prince, he also adored artists such as U2, Kate Bush, Culture Club, and Sinead O'Connor. In 1998, the Shakur family moved to Marin County, California. Afeni continued to struggle with addiction and maintaining stable employment, having to raise her family on mostly welfare. Their home was situated in an impoverished community in the San Francisco Bay Area. He was transferred to Tamalpay High School in Mill Valley nearby the family home. There he would continue his love for the stage, performing in several theater productions. In 1989, Tupac left home saying he was tired of watching his mother wither away. Afeni would later describe this period of addiction and estrangement from her son as living in the pit of the garbage can underneath the corroded bottom where only the maggots live. Although he ended up not graduating from high school due to him dropping out, he went on to earn his GED and headed out to try and break into the music industry. Before he became Tupac, Shakur was first known by the stage name MC New York by 1989. He began attending the poetry classes of Layla Steinberg that same year, and she soon became his manager. Steinberg organized a concert for Shakur and his rap group Strictly Dope, which he formed with Santa Rosa rapper Ray Love Tyson. She also managed to get him signed by Atron Gregory, manager of the rap group Digital Underground, and Gregory made him an addition to the Underground as a roadie and backup dancer. It was within this group that he would go on to debut as Tupac under the Interscope Records label in January 1991 single Same Song. The song opened the group's EP titled This Is an EP Release, with Tupac featuring in its music video. It also went on to be featured in 1991 movie Nothing But Trouble starring Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Chevy Chase, and Demi Moore. At Steinberg's request, Digital Underground co-founder Jimmy Chopmaster J. Dright worked with Shakur, Ray Love, and DJ Dice on their earlier studio recordings. Dright recalls that Shakur did not work well as part of a group and added, "This guy was on a mission from day one. Maybe he knew he wasn't going to be around 7 years later." In October 1991, 1 month before the release of Tupacalypse Now, 2 Oakland Police Department officers stopped Shakur for jaywalking at what's long been rumored as the intersection of 17th and Broadway in downtown Oakland. Tupac later recounted what happened next in an interview with Davey D. "For everyone who doesn't know, I, an innocent young black male, was walking down the streets of Oakland, minding my own business, and the police department saw it fit for me to be trained or snap back into my place. So they asked for my ID and sweated me about my name because my name is Tupac. My final words to them was, 'F y'all.' Next thing I know, I was in a chokehold, passing out with cuffs on, headed for jail for resisting arrest. Yes, you heard that right. I was arrested for resisting arrest." Shakur filed a $10 million lawsuit against the Oakland Police Department, but the case was settled for about $43,000. His debut album, Tupacalypse Now, alluding to the popular Apocalypse Now movie, was released in November 1991. Rappers such as Nas, Eminem, Game, and Talib Kweli were credited as inspirations. It featured hits such as Trapped and Brenda's Got a Baby. The album was met with a lot of backlash from prominent figures in society and would gain national attention after being denounced by then U.S. Vice President Dan Quayle in 1992. Quayle's remarks were in response to 18-year-old Texas resident Ronald Ray Howard's claim that Tupac's song Soldier Story, the album's third track, inspired him to murder Bill Davidson, a 43-year-old police officer, after being pulled over while driving a stolen car. "Once again, we're faced with an irresponsible corporate act," Quayle said in a statement following the incident. "There is absolutely no reason for a record like this to be published by a responsible corporation. Today, I am suggesting that the Time Warner subsidiary Interscope Records withdraw this record. It has no place in our society." Regardless, with 500,000 copies sold, the album was certified gold with the themes it explored remaining relevant till present day. Afeni had to be told that Tupac had appeared in a 1990 Arsenio Hall show. "I didn't know what was happening to my son," she says. "I thought, what am I doing?" While his career was taking off, Afeni determined by then to break her habits, moved back to New York, and began attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings in Connecticut. By the end of 1991, she was off crack and soon reconciled with Tupac. 9 months into her recovery program, Tupac sent her $5,000, even though the two still barely contacted each other. Prior to that, he had not sent her any money since she was still using. Speaking to People magazine, Afeni said, "That was huge. He sent me $5,000, and I kept the receipt for every dime I spent because that was the first time I could have a receipt for every dime in a long time." In 1992, he starred in the movie Juice as character Roland Bishop, the main antagonist. Film critic Peter Joseph Travis went on to describe him as the film's most magnetic figure. He made a cameo in music video Uptown Anthem by Naughty by Nature, a hip-hop trio group consisting of Treach, Vin Rock, and DJ KG. Later that same year, on August 22nd in Marin City, California, Tupac performed at an outdoor festival, then stayed for an hour signing autographs and posing for pictures. Some earlier negative remarks made by Tupac about Marin City had caught up to a few notorious figures in the area, and when arguments started, voices got loud. Tupac claimed to have allegedly drew a legally carried Colt Mustang, cocked it, fumbled and dropped it on the ground, then shouted, "Get the gun," to his brother Mopreme, who fired 3 to 6 times. Though nobody in the immediate crowd was hit, about 100 yards away, 6-year-old Cade Walker Teal, riding a bicycle at the schoolyard, was struck in the forehead, the bullets killing him instantly. Tupac and Mopreme left in their car and were stopped by an angry mob, by chance in front of a sheriff's substation. The police rescued the two by taking them into custody before later releasing them without charge due to a lack of witnesses, thwarting a prosecution. 3 years later, a civil case would be brought up by Cade's mother. Tupac's lawyer is said to have described the festival as a nasty situation, claiming Pac was saddened by the death of the boy. On November the 7th, 1995, Tupac's record company would settle the lawsuit for a figure reported between $300,000 to $500,000. His second album, Strictly for My Naggaz, released in February 1993, was a critical and commercial success, debuting to number 24 on the pop albums chart of the Billboard 200. It was a body of work which emphasized even more brazenly on socio-political themes previously explored in his debut album. Fellow rappers such as Militant, Ice Cube, who co-wrote NWA's Fuck the Police, and Ice-T, who in June 1992 had sparked controversy with his band Body Count's track Cop Killer, were featured on the album. It also featured party anthems such as I Get Around, reaching number 11 on the Billboard's Hot 100, a breakthrough hit. On the 23rd of July that same year, Tupac starred alongside Janet Jackson in John Singleton's romance film Poetic Justice. The movie received moderate reviews from mainstream critics, but remains a standout in Singleton's canon and one of his most enduring films. He would go on to say, Pac, he had done Juice, but Juice wasn't even out when I asked him to do the film. Q didn't want Poetic Justice, and I knew I had to get a real dude that guys would like and girls would like opposite Janet. He wasn't nearly Tupac until after Tupac's breakthrough single, I Get Around, came out, and the second album. That single came out that summer, and then he became Tupac. 93 was Tupac's year. Director Alan Hughes had cast Shakur as Sharif in the 1993 film Menace to Society, but replaced him with Vontae Sweet once Shakur assaulted him on set due to a discrepancy with the script. Tupac hit him from behind, the director's brother Albert Hughes went on to reveal in an interview with Complex. Alan turned around and threw him on top of the car. Tupac was like, "Go get my chain," and he let everybody else go at my brother. Alan got beat up by like 15 guys, but he stayed on his feet. One of the main prosecution's evidences was him boasting in an interview with Yo MTV Raps that he had beat up the director of Menace to Society. He would go on to be found guilty of assault the following year and spend 15 days in jail. Nonetheless, in 2013, Hughes appraises that Shakur would have outshone the other actors because he was bigger than the movie. Pac himself voiced his regret at their falling out, saying he wished to work with him again in the future if possible. In popular sitcom A Different World, He went on to make a guest appearance in the June 24th episode, Home, Don't You Know Me, as character Piccolo, who came to pay a visit to Lena James, played by childhood friend Jada Pinkett. Kadeem Hardison, who directed the episode, was impressed with Pac's performance, perhaps echoing back to his years of experience as a theater kid in high school. I always thought he was going to be a better actor than rapper, Hardison said on The Morning Show, echoing similar comments also made to Pac by Poetic Justice director John Singleton. He scared me as an actor. I'm like, this dude can reach places that I can't even imagine. While on set, he also formed a long-lasting friendship with the sitcom star Jasmine Guy, who played Whitley. She would go on to appear in his music video Temptations, recorded in 1993 to be released in 1995. She would also pen his mother's autobiography, Evolution of a Revolutionary, published in 2004. Tupac Shakur and Notorious Big may have been one of the biggest rivalries in hip-hop, but their relationship actually started off as a friendship. In fact, one of Biggie's first singles, Party and Bullshit, helped bring them together. The story goes that while on the set of Poetic Justice in 1993, Tupac had been playing Biggie's song on repeat. Biggie, who was just getting started in the music industry, was apparently flattered since Tupac had already been in the game for a while and ended up meeting with Tupac after at his LA home. Some other sources say the Brooklyn-bred rapper Biggie asked a local drug dealer to introduce him to Tupac, who invited Biggie and his entourage to his home. Dan Smalls, an intern for Biggie's label, was present during the visit and revealed that while there, Tupac shared with them a big freezer bag of the greenest vegetables I'd ever seen. Pac got them high and pulled out a green army bag filled with handguns and machine guns. So now, here we are, in the backyard running around with guns just playing. Luckily, they were all unloaded. While we were running around, Pac walks into the kitchen and starts cooking for us. He's in the kitchen cooking some steaks. We were drinking and smoking, and we got into the kitchen and he had steaks and French fries and bread and Kool-Aid, and we're just sitting there eating and drinking and laughing. And you know, that's truly where Big and Pac's friendship started. The rappers clicked immediately, and Biggie was said to have, quote, always thought it was a Gemini thing, end quote. Given that his birthday was on May 21st, 1972, and Tupac was on June 16, 1971. Weirdly enough, just as they were born months apart, Biggie would also be gunned down in the same manner just 8 months after Pac. His shooting is widely believed to have been connected to Pac's murder, but circumstances around it as of now remains unsolved. From the moment of their introduction to one another, Biggie and Tupac were cool and developed a teacher-student relationship. Biggie slept on Tupac's couch whenever he came down to California, and when Pac was in New York, he came by Biggie's neighborhood, picking him up in a white limousine and throwing dice with the locals. During this period, at his own live shows, Shakur would call Biggie onto the stage and rap with him and stretch. During Budweiser's Superfest concert at Madison Square Garden in 1993, the pair freestyled back-to-back with Biggie wowing the crowds with lines like, "Oh my God, I'm dropping shit like a pigeon. I hope you're listening, smacking babies at their christening." Despite the Garden cameo, Biggie still wasn't much known outside of Brooklyn. Tupac, by then a platinum-selling rapper and movie star, acted as a mentor. Biggie and other young rappers assembled in recording studios or hotel rooms to hear Tupac lecture about how to make it big in the game. Idi Amin, a member of Pac's group The Outlaws, revealed, "Everyone was transfixed by this dynamic individual and soaking up all the information we could soak up." But Tupac devoted special attention to Biggie, and together they recorded hits like Running from the Police and House of Pain. As his fame continued to rise, so did his run-ins against the law. On the 31st of October 1993, Shakur, 22 at the time, was arrested in Atlanta for shooting 2 off-duty police officers, brothers Mark Whitwell and Scott Whitwell. The Atlanta police claim that the shooting occurred after the brothers were almost struck by a car carrying Tupac while they were crossing the streets with their wives. As they argued with the driver, Tupac's car pulled up and he shot the Whitwells in the buttocks and the abdomen. However, there are conflicting accounts that the Whitwells were harassing a black motorist and uttered racial slurs. According to some witnesses, Tupac and his entourage had fired in self-defense as Mark Whitwell shot at them first. Pac's lawyer Robert Ellis argued that there had been a problem between the white officers and a black motorist not associated with Tupac, who he says was in a car coming from the opposite direction. When Tupac's party got out to investigate the traffic jam, according to Ellis, one of the Whitwells pulled and fired his gun. When shots were fired, they were returned, Ellis said, though he would not say if Tupac was involved in the shooting. Tupac was charged with 2 accounts of aggravated assault. Mark Whitwell was charged with firing at Tupac's car and later with making false statements to investigators. Scott Whitwell admitted to possessing a gun he had taken from a Henry County police evidence room. Prosecutors ultimately dropped all charges against both Pac and the brothers, and Mark Whitwell resigned from the force 7 months after the shooting. Later on, both brothers would file civil suits against Tupac. Matt Whitwell's suit was settled out of court, while Scott Whitwell's $2 million lawsuit resulted in a default judgment entered against the rapper's estate in 1998 after his death. In November 1993, Pac and 2 other men were charged for the first-degree assault of Ayanna Jackson in his hotel room, who was just 19 years old at the time of the incident. She alleged that she developed a sexual relationship with Pac after meeting him on the dance floor of a Manhattan nightclub. When she returned to his hotel room at the Parker Meridien in Midtown Manhattan on a later day, she was ambushed by the unexpected advances of 3 other men while hanging out with the rapper. The additional men were Tupac's record executive Jax Agnant, otherwise known as Haitian Jack, his road manager Charles Fuller, and an unidentified third. The men allegedly forced her to perform non-consensual acts on them while Ayanna pleaded to be allowed to leave and go home. He told me, "These are my boys. I like you so much I decided to share you with them," she said. "Because he had his hand on my braids, I couldn't physically move around." Pac reportedly left the room and Jackson said she was raped by the other men. Tupac was lying on the couch, she said. "In my mind, I'm thinking, this motherfucker just raped me and he's lying up there like a king, acting as if nothing happened. So I began crying hysterically and shouting, 'How could you do this to me? I came here to see you. I can't believe you did this to me.'" For this same event, Tupac was also charged with illegal possession of a firearm, as 2 guns were found in the hotel room, guns he would claim belonged to Biggie. 2 of the men who committed the crime were never charged. Instead, Pac was charged and his manager Charles Fuller was charged as a witness to the incident. During the time of the trial, Pac questioned Ayanna's intentions with the case, claiming he left the bedroom when the other men entered and fell asleep. The prosecution alleged Tupac, charged with sexual abuse, sodomy, and illegal weapon possession, had offered up Jackson as a reward for his boys. Tupac denied this, but after the trial told Vibe he blamed himself for doing nothing to protect Ayanna from the other men. "How am I going to force a woman to do something to me that we've already done consensually?" he said. "If the case is about me and this girl, then we wouldn't be here. I'm guilty of a lot of things, but I'm not guilty of." He was convicted of first-degree sexual abuse and spent only 9 months in prison out of the 4.5-year sentence, which he started in early 1995. Ayanna would later file a civil suit against him, seeking $10 million for punitive damages, which was subsequently settled. After forming the group Thug Life with Big Sky, Makadoshis, Rated R, and his stepbrother Mopreme Shakur in 1993, they released the Thug Life Volume 1 on October the 11th, 1994, which became certified gold. It featured the single All Eyes on Me, which was added to the soundtrack for the 1994 film Above the Rim. Pac reportedly asked Biggie to join his Thug Life side group, but he declined the offer, choosing to form his own junior mafia instead with his Brooklyn friends Lil Cease and Lil Kim. While filming the 1994 movie Bullet, which would be released a month after his death, he developed a close bond with actor Mickey Rourke, who recalled that Shakur was there for him during some very difficult times. 2 decades after his murder, when asked what it was like partying with the rapper, he said, "We never saw the daylight. I mean, I love him, I miss him, daily. We were very similar. We had a lot of stuff in common and we loved each other deeply. I think about him all the time on a weekly basis. He went on to star in the 1994's Above the Rim as character Birdie. By some accounts, that character had been modeled after former New York drug dealer Haitian Jack, who managed and promoted a number of rappers. Tupac had noticed Haitian Jack at a Manhattan club surrounded by women and champagne and asked for an introduction. They also spent time at a Queens bar where Jack would bring through celebrities including Madonna, Shabba Ranks, and Jamaican musician Buju Banton. Biggie, who ran in the same circles as Haitian Jack and his associates, warned Tupac to keep his distance from him to no avail. Tupac liked Jack's swagger. He introduced the rapper to high-end jewelry and Versace duds, as well as the local gangsters who called the shots. He loved the respect and recognition I got in New York, and I think he wanted that same respect, Haitian Jack would later say. The two had met earlier in 1993, and it was while partying with Haitian Jack at the Club Nels that he had met Ayanna Jackson on the dance floor. Haitian Jack was one of the men accused and arrested for her assault, but before the trial began, Pac and Fuller's cases were severed from Haitian Jack's in a deal that Pac and his lawyer deemed too good to be true. Jack pleaded guilty to 2 misdemeanors and avoided jail time. Believing Haitian Jack was a snitch, Pac told the New York Daily News reporter that Jack had set him up, a claim which he and Ayanna denied. His call-out of Haitian Jack, who had connections with a reputation in the streets, was a big risk, but after having spent so much time with Jack and his clique, Pac had begun to consider himself untouchable, going wherever he wanted to go while donning himself with jewelry worth thousands of dollars. His string of court cases, lawyers, and generosity to family members and friends who depended on him for help had severely crippled his finances. On September the 14th, 1994, he pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge and was sentenced to 30 days in jail, 20 of them suspended on condition that he completes 35 hours of community service. This was as a result of throwing a microphone and swinging a bat at rapper Chauncey Wynn of the group Mad at a concert in Michigan State University in April 1993. He was also arrested in 1994 for speeding and the discovery of a semi-automatic pistol in the car, a felony offense because of a prior conviction in 1993 in Los Angeles for carrying a concealed firearm. In late 1994, he agreed to record a guest verse for a rapper named Little Sean, who was close with Puffy and Biggie. The invitation came from Little Sean's manager, Jimmy Henchman Rosemond, whom Tupac had met through Haitian Jack, and Tupac was to be paid $7,000. On November the 30th, 1994, Tupac arrived stoned to Quad Recording Studios in Times Square. He came with 3 associates, none of whom were bodyguards, and encountered 3 other men he didn't know, wearing army fatigues. This was a fashion from Brooklyn, Biggie's home, so Tupac assumed they were with him. He felt better about the situation when Biggie's affiliated rapper Lil Cease yelled down to him that Biggie was upstairs recording. Puffy was there too. But before Tupac's crew could get on the elevator, the men in army fatigues drew 9mm guns and ordered them to the floor. Instead, Tupac reached for his own gun. He was shot, beaten, robbed of his jewelry. He played dead and the assailants left, at which time he staggered into the elevator and rode it upstairs. When the doors opened, he saw a group including Puffy, Biggie, and henchmen. Tupac said the crew looked surprised and guilty, but Puffy claimed they showed him nothing but love and concern. Tupac believed the incident was more than a random heist. It was like they were mad at me, he said. He also found it fishy that he was the only one among all the stars of the quad that night who got robbed and shot. He claimed to have taken 5 bullets, including shots to the head and through his scrotum. Bill Courtney, a retired NYPD cop who also worked hip-hop cases, believed the stick-up was a response to Tupac's daily news comments against Haitian Jack. A message was being sent to him not to name drop, he said. Nobody came to rob you, Henchman told Vibe in 2005. They came to discipline you. Puffy denied involvement in the crime or any prior knowledge of it. Haitian Jack also claimed he wasn't involved and following a separate conviction was deported back to Haiti in 2007. Pac was taken to Bellevue Hospital and a team of 13 doctors worked to repair a damaged blood vessel in his right leg. There were several important male figures in Tupac Shakur's life, but it wasn't until he was 23 years old that he met his biological father. Living separately but around the family for his son's early childhood, Garland fell out of touch after he remarried in the mid-70s when Pac was about 5 years old and stayed that way until Pac was admitted to the hospital following the shooting. Garland would later state, "I had to be there. I just wanted him to know that I cared." Regarding the visit, Pac stated in a 1996 interview with Vibe magazine, "I thought my father was dead my whole life. After I got shot, I looked up and there was this that looked just like me. And he was my father. That's when I found out. We still didn't take no blood test, but the looked just like me and the other is dead. So now I feel like I'm past the father stage. I do want to know him, and I do know him. We did talk and he did visit and help me when I was locked down, but I'm past that." 2 years after his passing, Garland would sue Afeni for half of his late son's estate, citing in the lawsuit her false claim on the death certificate that her only son's father was deceased. Garland lost the case, but a DNA test he took from the hearing confirmed his paternity. When Pac got out of surgery, he felt vulnerable around all the unfamiliar doctors and the fact that his enemies would know where to find him. So he checked himself out of the hospital less than 3 hours after the surgery on his leg. His surgeon said he had never seen anybody leave like that. Not wanting to go somewhere he could be found, understanding that men like Haitian Jack had the power to finish the job even in a hospital, he holed up at the apartment of Jasmine Guy, being cared for by his mother Afeni and a private doctor. The Fruit of Islam and former members of the Black Panther Party stood guard. "Somebody wanted him dead," explained Jasmine, and walking around knowing that really affected his spirits. The next day, he returned to court to hear the jury's verdict on the Ayanna Jackson case, looking frail and in a wheelchair. Surrounded by the security force of the Nation of Islam, his head topped with a wool Yankee skull cap that covered his bandages, he had to leave before the verdict was read because his leg had gone numb. While serving his sentence from the Ayanna case, a disturbing rumor began to sink in, one that came from people he trusted, that Biggie knew in advance about the Quad Studio shooting. "He owed me more than to turn his head and act like he didn't know was about to blow my head off," he said later. And even if Biggie hadn't set him up, he should at least have been able to find out who did it. "You don't know who shot me in your own hometown," he protested. "These from your own neighborhood?" The way Tupac saw it, his own friend had betrayed him, a friend he had taken under his own wing. Tupac thought about how Biggie hadn't given him a mention in the liner notes of his debut album, Ready to Die. He'd been a mentor to Biggie. That was disrespect. He thought about how Biggie and Puffy allowed Haitian Jack into their entourage. He told one reporter, "I was hurt. I was going to trial. I'm probably going to be convicted. And this is showing up at a party with champagne, hanging out with Biggie?" Back in 1994, the people who knew what happened refused to talk, and definitely not to police, leading to no arrest ever being made over the Quad Studio shooting. He began his sentence at Rikers Island from February the 14th, 1995, before being transferred to Clinton Correctional Facility in March. While imprisoned, he began reading again, which he had been unable to do as his career progressed due to his marijuana and alcohol habits. Works such as The Prince by Italian philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli and The Art of War by Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu sparked Shakur's interest in philosophy, philosophy of war, and military strategy. These would come to play a big role in his lyrical output. Director John Singleton, who had previously worked with him on Poetic Justice, had to fire him from the already booked role in 1995 film Higher Learning, as the studio would not finance the film following his arrest. His third album, Me Against the World, was released while incarcerated in March 1995. Currently, it ranks as one of the most influential rap albums and is hailed as his magnum opus. It debuted to #1 on the Billboard 200 and sold 240,000 copies in its first week of release. setting a then record for highest first-week sales for a solo male rapper. The album's most successful single, Dear Mama, topped the Hot Rap Singles charts and peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100, and by July it was certified platinum. So Many Tears and Temptations were also hits. He would later win Best Rap Album at the 1996 Soul Train Music Awards. He exchanged letters with celebrities such as Jim Carrey and Tony Danza, among others. He was also visited by Al Sharpton, who helped him get released from solitary confinement. On the 29th of April 1995, Pac married his then-girlfriend Keisha Morris, a pre-law student. The two had met earlier in the summer of 1994 while Keisha was attending John Jay College of Criminal Justice, New York, and working as a camp counselor. We met when I was 20, she is quoted saying for XXL magazine. At the Capitol nightclub, we were dancing and we spoke briefly. He was going through something legally at the time, and I told him to be careful of the people he's around and that I hope that everything works out. I saw him a month later at the tunnel, and he remembered the whole conversation. He told me he had been looking for me for a whole month, going to every club. He tried to invite me back to his hotel room, but I was like, no thanks, that's not happening. He gave me his number and I gave him my house number. It was way too expensive to have a cell phone back then, so he gave me his Sky pager. The next day I had to go work and he called me when I got home. I was in shock. We started talking from that day on. Pac proposed before he started serving out his sentence, and the ceremony was held 4 months into his incarceration. He wanted a visit every day so he could get out of that cell. It was such a dramatic process. If I wasn't able to be there, I would make sure that someone else was there. I was 20 years old. I didn't know what was going on. Of course my parents didn't want me involved with anything like that. Would I do it again now? Absolutely not. Unfortunately, their union was relatively brief as the marriage would be annulled just 10 months later, not long after Pac got out of jail. On their separation, she revealed, I moved closer to him. It was like my day revolved around him and what his needs were. Things were getting very different once he got bail, and I felt like I wasn't needed anymore. It wasn't a good feeling. And when I found out he was being released, he didn't even tell me. I had to call the prison and find out what was going on. He didn't tell me. A member of his family came and said, we'll take his stuff, you had your 15 minutes of fame. Now we'll take over from here. I couldn't even express to you the pain. In his 1995 interview with Vibe magazine, Shakur listed Jada Pinkett, Jasmine Guy, Treach, and Mickey Rourke among the people who were looking out for him while he was in prison. There was no mention of Keisha or their marriage throughout the article. He even gave credit to Madonna, who later revealed had dated him briefly in 1994 after Rosie Perez introduced them at the 1993 Soul Train Awards in LA. He also accused Sean Combs, Jimmy Henchman, and Biggie for setting up or being privy to his robbery and shooting. Biggie and Combs released the track Who Shot You, which Pac took as a personal mockery. Months later, he would release his response, Hit 'Em Up, in which he targeted Biggie, Combs, and their record label, Junior Mafia. In the track, he also claimed to have had sexual intercourse with Faith Evans, Biggie's wife at the time, and attacked Bad Boy Records' street credibility. Rewinding just a little bit, earlier that same year of 1995, before his release, he had asked Keisha to relay a message to Suge Knight, the head of the volatile label Death Row Records, that he was broke and needed help. On top of the lawyer's fees and everything else, his mother was also in the process of losing her house. Reportedly, Shakur's mother promptly received $15,000. Despite the lengthy distance from Los Angeles to Danmora, where Pac had been transferred, Knight began making periodic visits to see Pac. His label, Death Row, offered him a deal no one else had offered before, the promise of freedom. Death Row's lawyer, David Kenner, pledged to help Tupac with his case and began working to spring him on an appeal board. On one of those visits, Pac not only agreed to join Death Row, but told Knight about his anger at Biggie. I need you to ride with me because I'm going to destroy Bad Boy Records. I believe they had something to do with me getting shot. An East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry had already been brewing between Death Row and Bad Boy Records, founded by Puffy, with artists including Biggie. Knight pledged his loyalty. Pac's enemies would be his enemies. In October 1995, Knight visited Shakur in prison again and posted his $1.4 million bond. Shakur returned to Los Angeles and joined Death Row with the appeal of his December 1994 conviction pending. Pac's fourth album, All Eyes on Me, was released on the 13th of February 1996, fulfilling 2 of the 3 albums due in his contract with Death Row. Music journalist Kevin Powell noted that Pac, once released from prison, became more aggressive and seemed like a completely transformed person. It became his second album to hit number 1 on the top R&B/hip hop albums chart and the Billboard 200, selling 566,000 copies in its first week. In April, it was certified 5 times multi-platinum. A few of its hits included How Do You Want It and California Love. In a Details magazine interview during the spring of 1996 with William Shaw, Pac gave hints regarding his mindset following his jail release. That afternoon, we drove on to Death Row's Can-Am studios in the suburbs of Tarzana so Shakur could play me tracks for his forthcoming LP, All Eyes on Me. The industrial units had been turned into a heavily guarded fortress. Once again, Shakur started smoking weed. Among musicians and friends, including a young rapper called Yaki Gaddafi, his demeanor was relaxed, but as he talked, a darker side emerged. He talked about that shooting in 1994. Right now, I know I'm not going to live forever. I know I'm going to die in violence. Does that make you afraid? Asked Shaw. No, I'm not afraid of the coming for me or what they might do, because it's going to happen. All the who change the world die in violence. They don't get to die in regular ways. Mothers come to take their lives. By then, he was pretty stoned. I didn't think for a minute that what he was saying had much to do with reality. On the 7th of September 1996, Pac was in Las Vegas, Nevada to celebrate business partner Tracy Danielle Robinson's birthday. Afterwards, he attended the Bruce Seldon vs. Mike Tyson boxing match with Suge Knight at the MGM Grand. Tupac and Suge sat up front and Pac cheered Tyson on as he had done so many times before. The fight lasted only 109 seconds. Afterwards, in the lobby, one of Knight's associates spotted Orlando Anderson, also known as Baby Lane, a Southside Compton Crip, and told Shakur he had tried to rob them earlier that year. In a prior incident in a Lakewood mall, Orlando Anderson had stolen Trayvon Lane's Death Row medallion that happened to be a personal gift from Suge Knight. Rumors have it that Puffy had put him up to it in order to use the medallion during a music video shooting to mock the Death Row record label. The hotel surveillance footage shows the ensuing assault on Anderson. Tupac stepped up to Orlando and said, "You from the South?" Tupac then punched him in the face, knocking him to the ground, after which Suge and the Death Row entourage proceeded to beat him up. There were some strange occurrences which happened leading up to the fatal attack, according to the book written by Tupac's bodyguard, Frank Alexander. The first was that permits were not sent ahead of time, so they were not allowed to carry guns. The second was that he ended up without his phone, and the third coincidence would come after the fight. After the beating of Orlando Anderson, the entourage returned to where they were staying at the Luxor Hotel, a block south of the Las Vegas Strip. Tupac changed from a tan silk shirt and jeans to a baseball top and sweatpants, as well as his euthanasia medallion. The cars were delivered to the front. Tupac went with Suge, and Frank Alexander ended up driving Kidada Jones's car, Quincy Jones's daughter, Pac's girlfriend at the time, with no gas and supposedly no weapon. They headed to Suge Knight's Las Vegas residence on Monte Rosa Avenue. They stayed there until after 10 p.m. when they left towards Death Row Club 662 at 1700 East Flamingo Road. Suge and Tupac were driving, with Suge at the wheel of a newly purchased 1996 black 760 BMW sedan. They were cruising down the strip playing Machiavelli when at 11:05 p.m. they were stopped by bicycle-mounted police for playing the stereo too loud and not displaying proper plates. Of interesting note, some might say, is that the shooting took place just after the police stopped them. After they were let go, Suge and Tupac headed east on Flamingo Road, where they paused for a red light at Koval Lane, half-mile from the strip. One car pulled up a car length ahead to the right, and Gaddafi, Frank, and EDI were in the car behind them. A jeep full of girls pulled up to the left and got Suge and Tupac's attention, and that's when it happened. A late model Cadillac with 4 men inside pulled up directly to the right of the BMW and sprayed 13 rounds into the car. Pac saw it going down and tried to jump into the back seat. He was hit twice. One bullet hit his leg and ricocheted up into his lung. Suge was hit in the head with a piece of shrapnel. There were reports that gunfire was returned, but this has been debated and has not been verified completely. The Cadillac turned right into Koval Lane and vanished. Some cars in the entourage tried to follow the Cadillac, but it seemingly disappeared. For years, rumors surrounding the shooting had Orlando Anderson, the victim of the assault earlier that same night, with Jerry Bonds driving the white Cadillac, while Dwayne Keith Davis, also known as Keefy D, was the shooter. An article in Details magazine stated that Orlando and his brother wanted to start a studio, but didn't have the resources. Allegedly, after the shooting, they came into some money and the possibility of a payoff for some role in the shooting is possible. Suge, meanwhile, pulled a U-turn and headed back down East Flamingo. Suge reportedly told Tupac that he was going to get him to a hospital. The U-turn was questionable because the Desert Springs Hospital is located at 2075 East Flamingo, not far from Club 662. Suge knew the area all too well as he used to play for the UNLV Rebels. The cops turned and followed Suge down the road instead of securing the crime scene. As a result, the scene and evidence were ran over and dispersed through traffic. 3 cars from their entourage also followed Suge down East Flamingo. Suge got caught up in traffic, went over a median, ran a red light, and popped a couple tires on the center divider. He ran the red light at Harmon Avenue and then got stuck on the median with 4 flat tires. Police, ambulance, and the fire department arrived on the scene that was in total chaos. Leonard Jefferson, a witness at the scene, would confirm Suge got out of the car yelling, "My man Pac is shot! Pac is shot!" Reports were made of people running up trying to snatch side mirrors and such off of the car. Tupac's entourage was ordered to get on the ground and held at gunpoint, while Tupac was loaded into an ambulance and taken to University Medical Center. Rahimi, a friend of Pac, who later revealed in an interview to Esquire, "We found out he had been taken to University Medical Center. We went there, and I remember one of the first things I saw was Kidada Jones and his cousin Jamala crying on the payphones. Everyone else that was in the ER waiting room was Suge's people. They were undercover FBI agents. The police weren't helping. I got one of the death threats. The marketing director came up to me on the 3rd day and said, 'They called a row. They're going to come finish him off.' And then he walked away. It was just chaos and no support. We didn't trust death row. We didn't trust anyone." Regarding the state of Pac in his critical condition, he said, "It was a dark room. He had the tube down his throat. He was basically naked except for the couple of sheets they had him covered with. His head was swollen twice the size, and everywhere there was a bullet wound. There was gauze on each and blood was seeping through. He was missing a finger, so that was bandaged up. I walked up to him and I put my hand on his arm. He was ice cold. I'd imagine because of all the fluids going through him. I said a little prayer and I walked out, and that was the last time I ever saw him." Tupac remained at the intensive care unit while family and friends had a vigil at the hospital. While in hospital, Tupac had his right lung removed. He was in and out of consciousness and was highly sedated. Later, he was placed on a ventilator and respirator life support and put into a drug-induced coma. The doctor made a promising statement that Tupac had passed the critical phase and had a 50% chance of survival. Considering the odds Tupac had been faced with throughout his life and had always succeeded, a 50% chance seemed like a certainty. Unfortunately, they couldn't stop the internal bleeding and Tupac passed. After several attempts to revive him, his mother Afeni decided to let him rest. On the 13th of September, at the age of 25, the always lively Tupac had breathed his last breath at 4:03 p.m. In 2014, Chris Carroll, a retired surgeon with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the first police officer to arrive at the scene of Shakur's drive-by murder, spoke publicly about the rapper's last few words. Carroll attempted to get a dying declaration of a potential suspect from Shakur, but the musician didn't budge. He said, "He went from fighting to, 'I can't do it.' And that's when I looked at him and said, 'One more time, who shot you?' He looked at me and he took a breath to get the words out. He opened his mouth and I thought I was actually going to get some cooperation. And then the words came out. F you." After that, he started gurgling and slipping out of consciousness. In the following week of Tupac's shooting, 3 people were killed in 12 shootings. The police performed a massive raid of almost 40 houses, including Orlando Anderson's, where they confiscated a death row pendant. On September the 9th, on East Alondra, a man who Las Vegas police said may have been in the Cadillac was shot in the back. On the 11th, Bobby Finch, who Compton cops said may have also been in the Cadillac, was gunned down in South Mayo at 9:05 a.m. 2 Bloods were shot and killed by an assailant who fled on foot. On May 29, 1998, Orlando Anderson and his friend Michael Reed Darrow pulled into the parking lot of Sig's record store at the intersection of Alondra and Oleander in Compton. Here he met Michael Stone, also a Crip, who was with his nephew Jerry Stone. Tempers rose and a gunfight erupted. Orlando Anderson and the Stones were all killed. For almost 3 decades, the answer to who murdered Tupac Shakur has remained a mystery. It would be 27 years later, 2 years longer than the length of Pac's life, before an official arrest would be made. Keefe D's drug business fell apart after Pac's murder, and his Colombian handlers decided he was too notorious to be useful. He slid into obscurity until 2018, when he did something extraordinary. Despite having claimed no involvement in the events of the shooting, he started to talk. In a Netflix documentary, Unsolved, Keefe D confirmed there were 4 people in the white Cadillac. The driver had been a man named Terrence Brown. Behind him and Keefe D sat a man named DeAndre Smith, and next to him, Orlando Anderson. Keefe D admitted procuring the pistol that would be the murder weapon and gathering up 3 vehicles full of men to confront Knight. Suge and his boys committed the ultimate disrespect when they kicked and beat down my nephew Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, he announced. They had waited at Club 662, but when Knight didn't materialize, they set off looking for him. Keefe D didn't name the killer, but he claimed that the fatal shots came from the back seats. That means it would have been either DeAndre Smith or Orlando Anderson. Afterwards, Keefe D drove the Cadillac back to Compton, where it was cleaned and repainted. Additionally, he also allegedly claimed that Puffy had offered $1 million to the Southside Crips to take out Pac and Suge Knight. In some ways, it is a surprise that it took 5 more years for Las Vegas police to arrive at Keefe's wife, Paula Clemens' house. At the very least, Keefe D, the last living witness out of the Cadillac 4, had publicly admitted to arming Shakur's killer, organizing the hunt, and then destroying evidence. Authorities claimed that Keefe's own public comments revived the investigation. On the 29th of September 2023, at the age of 60, Keefe D was taken into custody while on a 7 a.m. walk near his home on the outskirts of Las Vegas. Hours before, prosecutors announced in court that a Nevada grand jury had indicted the self-described gangster on 1 count of murder with a deadly weapon. Further prosecutions are currently ongoing. The last image ever taken of Pac was on the night of his murder by a 29-year-old UCLA film student named Leonard Jefferson, who had a bit of history with Pac as he had previously hung out with Leonard and some of his co-workers. During a new interview with Complex, Jefferson revealed, "I came to a light at Harmon Avenue and I looked over and saw some shiny rims on a BMW. I looked over and it was Tupac and Suge. I said, 'Yo, what's up, Pac?' Pac paused for a second, recognized who he was, and responded in kind. Leonard asked what they were doing that night, and Pac said they were going to Club 662 and that he should come over. I said, 'All right, cool. Hey, let me grab a picture real quick.' My camera was in the center console, so I just grabbed it and then snapped that picture. Right after that, the lights changed green and they pulled off. Tupac's body was cremated the day after he was pronounced dead. Members of his former group Outlaws, recalling a line in his song Black Jesus, smoked some of his body's ashes after mixing them with marijuana. Cremated Last Wishes, Smoke My Ashes, group member Idi Amin would recall. That was a request that he had. Now, how serious he was about it? We took it serious. We twisted up some of that great-granddaddy California Kush and mixed the big homie with it. He's flowing through our system. While alive, Pac had arranged for Afeni, his mother, to receive $16,000 monthly and purchased a 2.2-acre estate with a 6-bedroom home for her in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Because her son died without a will, Afeni had to file court papers establishing herself as the administrator of his estate and the sole living heir. He had less than $105,000 in his single checking account and barely anything to show for his chart-topping career. No mutual funds, no IRA, no real estate. Tupac didn't even own his Woodlands Hills Caliph home. The Death Row label contended that it was Tupac's own careless spending that left him so broke. Jada Pinkett and Jasmine Guy, who provided her emotional support during her grieving, advised Afeni to hire lawyers to sort out Pac's assets. Afeni quickly moved to sue Death Row Records and threatened to prevent the distributor, Interscope Records, from releasing a highly anticipated Posthomous album. She sued Entertainment One, claiming they failed to pay Tupac's estate royalties worth 7 figures. A court ruled Entertainment One must pay over 6 figures for royalties from Shakur's posthumous releases, and all the unreleased recordings will go back to the estate. After a series of long legal battles, Tupac's estate would earn tens of millions of dollars in the form of royalties, licensing deals, and more. The value of Tupac's intellectual property rights alone was worth a fortune. Afeni would go on to found Amaru Entertainment, a holding company for all of Tupac's unreleased material, set up the Tupac Amaru Shakur Foundation and the Tupac Amaru Shakur Center, which provides art programs for the young, teamed up with Biggie's mother to squash the East Coast-West Coast beef, and also executively produced the Oscar-nominated documentary Tupac Resurrection, as well as helped create the Broadway musical Holler If You Hear Me, which featured Tupac's music. Taking precautions for the future, she also went on to set up a trust that would control all of Tupac's music rights, which assigned music executive Tom Whaley as the executor of his estates following her death in 2016. In 2010, Dear Mama was inducted into the Library of Congress Recordings Registry, which preserves culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant works. It was only the third hip-hop song to be inducted, following Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five's The Message and Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet. Describing the song in October 1995, Pac had said, "I wrote it for my mama because I love her and I felt I owed her something deep." In a People article in 1997, asked about the song, Afeni responded, "Can I listen to it without crying? No. It gets worse every time. It gets harder. It really does. That song gets deeper and deeper." When Dear Mama was honored by the Library of Congress, she reflected on her relationship with her son and the song's broader appeal. "It could have been any song, but I'm honored they chose Dear Mama in particular," she said. "It is a song that spoke not just to me, but every mother that has been in that situation. There have been millions of us. Tupac recognized our struggle, and he is still our hero.